The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has been a staple in the nation's news more often than not for the wrong reasons. With a few exceptions, the headlines surrounding this oil giant have been dominated by controversies, inefficiencies, and their impact on the Nigerian populace. Recently, the cable reported that NNPCL received approval from President Bola Tinubu to use its 2023 dividends due to the Federation to pay for the petrol subsidy. Additionally, it also got the president's nod to suspend the payment of 2024 interim dividends to the Federation to actually augment the oil firm's cash flow. So this morning, to help us understand this better, I'm joined by Tolulope Aderemi, our partner, Perchstone Graeys LP. Thank you so much, Tolulope, for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you, Leg.
We are actually inundated with uninspiring and maybe a few pleasant stories about the nation's oil giants. Now, what's your reading of these? Is this the curve the country needs to actually take before things finally get better?
Okay, so which one are we? Which one is the curve that you're talking about? Is it the sale of crude oil?
Basically, yes. Yeah, let's pick it from there even.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think it's a step in the right direction. There's been a lot of domestic or agitation for domestic renaissance in Nigeria. And I think it must start, with the cash cow, that sector that produces, most of the funds that funds our budget. And I think it's thinking outside the box, to selling crude oil to local refineries in Naira. Now, many people have raised concerns about it, but at the same time, there are several merits to it. And I think some of those merits, as you may know, are quite obvious. The first one, like everybody will agree with me, is that it conserves our foreign exchange earnings and outflows. One of Nigeria's major challenges today is the pressure on Naira, and the reason for the pressure on Naira is the excessive and aggressive demand, of forex. The purchase of crude oil and PMS in particular, I think, is one major part of what constitutes the pressure, on Naira. And guess what? If Nigeria is able to do this and achieve this come October 1, as the federal government has said, we're going to be saving about $7.32 billion. And I think that's a whooping sum of money when compared to what we were able to save, which was about $400 billion, the moment subsidies was removed. So I think I want us to look at it from the bright side. It reduces the pressure on Naira. We're able to save a bit more money, and then we're able to conserve our foreign exchange portfolio. But what is even more important is that it assists or it reduces our overdependence on petroleum. I think it's a shame, really, that we're a producing nation and then there's this overdependence, on imported petroleum products. We have several of them in Nigeria that are local refineries. You have OPAC, you have Walter Smith, I think you have Aradel, and then you have Dangote. I understand that BOA is also coming upstream, I think sometimes in 2025. And so really the earlier we started getting used to the fact that our domestic refineries play a significant role in shoring up the Nigeria's economy, I think the better. You may want to ask, are there demerits to it? Oh, certainly there are demerits. And some of those demerits, I discussed them elsewhere. One of them is exchange rate volatility. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has a huge role, to play here in terms of aligning our fiscal and our monetary policies so that we can stabilize the Naira. If we're not able to stabilize the Naira and it dips any further, what it means is that the crude we're selling in Naira must be at a competitive rate. And so really, even though we're selling them in Naira, it must be at a dollar value, because that's the only way by which it can make sense, justifiably so, and commercial sense, first to the NPDRA, second to the NUPRC, who raises the RFP, to the IOCs. for them to meet the domestic supply application. And really, you will not want to be selling crude to local refineries at a loss, because don't forget that most of the payments coming from this sector is what finances, which I'm sure you're going to be coming to, the operations of NNPC is what makes NNPC able to pay its taxes and dividends, etc. I'm sure we'll come to that. So stability of the Naira, exchange rate volatility, I think is extremely crucial. The second challenge I think we must try to avoid is that before jumping into it, come October 1, there must be an audit of all the local refineries. And what is that audit for? Infrastructural capacity. I know that Dangote has the capacity to be able to refine, as much as we need. I think it can refine about 15 million barrels per day. Nigeria, we understand we consume about 35 million barrels per day. So Dangote is fine, but we need to look at all the others, Aradel, Walter Smith, OPAC. We want to be sure, one, that there's no monopoly, as it has been alleged in more recent times.
Okay,
so making sure that all the other
yeah, we're actually going to, look at what needs to be stricken out and what more needs to be done for that particular sector. But then, we're picking it in bits and pieces, so we have a proper understanding. And now, let's just quickly look at the other curve, and that is the NNPCL getting, number one, a nod for the payment of the fuel subsidy with 2023 dividends due to the Federation. And the other side of it is the suspension of the payment of 2024 interim dividends to the Federation to augment its cash flow. I'd like you to help us understand that particular area better and where we even stand with the issue around subsidy payments.
All right, that's a bit of a tricky one where you have put me. But let me just start by saying all that is happening is just simple implementation both of the Petroleum Industry Act as well as the Companies and Allied Matters Act, which has recently been amended. That's all that has happened here. All the other plenty, grammar and English that you have used, they just for that complicating. So let's simplify it.
Okay.
As it is, NNPC is a private company, right? And by law, it is owned by two shareholders. The Ministry of Finance Incorporated, that's MOFI, owns 50%, and then the Ministry of Petroleum owns it 50%. And I think those two things must be well known to Nigerians. So these are the two holders or owners of NNPC. Now, they are owning 100% shares on behalf of the Federation, which is the federal government, state government, and the local government. And I will tell you where I somewhat fault President Tinubu's decision, even though it's an excellent decision. But I thought it was important that I said that background clear. Now, when I say it's purely a combine of implementation of both the PIA as well as the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Now, if you go and look at Section 53 of the PIA, it makes federal government the sole shareholder in the NNPCL. That's the transition NNPC. And so what that means is that the main shareholder or the sole shareholder takes all the decisions, even though as it's presently constituted today, it takes the decisions on behalf of Nigerians. But truth is, government takes all the decisions as we speak today. Now, what gives it the right to take those decisions is by the ownership 100% of the shares. So if tomorrow NNPC comes to London and comes to list on the London Stock Exchange or goes to the New York Stock Exchange to list, and we have new shareholders, the federal government may not be able to make this sort of decisions anymore because it's now going to be decisions by way of voting. Now, Section 139 of CAMA makes shares your personal property as a shareholder. And because it's your personal property as a shareholder, you can decide what to do with it.
Okay.
And so basically what you have simply said, what the governor has simply said this morning is that, look, my entitlement as dividends or by way of dividends should be plowed back into the payment of subsidies. which is the reason why petrol is sold today anywhere between 500 to 1,000. So in terms of legal or statutory rights of the federal government to do what it has done, patently, yes, it does have the right.
Okay.
Now, latently, and this is where I some quarrel with it, is that those 100% are held on behalf of the federal, the state, and the local government. And that is why any funds derived therein, which is the dividend, must go into the federation account, which will now be split between all the three parties. The decision to plow it back into the federal, into NNPC, for NNPC to be able to make subsidy payments, was it a joint decision that was made? I am not aware that was a joint decision.
Okay, so with all these that you've said, because of course you talked about nomenclature and the use of grammar, for the ordinary Nigerian, they're just thinking about whether subsidy is being paid or not. How will that reduce the price of pump at filling stations? So, I mean, amidst this public outcry for a policy reversal that we've heard for a couple of months now on this fuel subsidy removal, does this invariably mean, or maybe technically speaking, that fuel subsidy is back? And would that in any way, return the situation to status quo where pump price was probably around 165 Naira? Or are we just going to be over and around the 500, 600? Because, I mean, that is what is most pertinent for Nigerians as of now.
All right, Lekon, the truth is that Nigerians must believe and accept that something must give if prices have to come to 165 or 200 200 Naira per liter. And why do I say so? And let me be bold for once. I mean, I probably have shied away from this question many times. That is subsidy back. I think subsidy came back the month or two after President Tinubu became president and after that speech at Eagle Square. And why do I say so? When President Tinubu declared that subsidy was to be removed in May 2023, you recall that by June of the following month, we recorded almost about 400 billion profit from what was saved from payment of subsidies. But guess what? At the same time, there were also the financial engineering with the central bank, and there was a devaluation of our currency. And so really, because we devalued the currency, Nigerians must understand we almost lost or eroded all what would have been the profits that NNPC would have made. One, to be able to continue to pay dividends pursuant to the PIA, and secondly, to also augment and be able to give Nigerians constant supply. And so what you have found between June of 2023 and today, and if you look at the daily severally, you will see that by December of 2024, we probably will be amassing about 6 trillion in debt of subsidy or subsidy payments. And so NNPC clearly, by its books, can no longer carry on this burden. And that's the reason why it had to come out to say, look, there's no way I can carry on paying, this differential. It's called FX differential. Now, we've not been able to stabilize the FX market. The central bank is doing quite a lot in that regard. But sadly, the pressure still continues. And so because the pressure is there, and remember, we're not using a single window. And so what used to be the case under the old administration is no longer the case. And so NNPC does not have a preferred or preferential treatment for dollar exchange. So they all go to the same window in the central bank. And so it's a big struggle for NNPC. And clearly, NNPC is not able. And the reason why, if we go and look at the landing cost, it continues to change every day. There was a morning I was going to change dollars. I didn't change it in the morning. By 12:45 in the afternoon, the value had changed dramatically. And this is the fluctuation you find when it comes to even the landing cost of.
Okay, so Tolulope, let's try to wrap things up now. I just quickly want to get your reaction about a minute or two, your reaction on the fact that, the government can come around and talk about fuel subsidy and give it all kind of names. But then one of our guests on the show yesterday hammered on an open door approach to NNPCL's operations and financial dealings. Now, isn't transparency meant to be an integral part of a supposed commercial entity with hopes of even coming into the capital markets?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a private limited company as we speak today, and Nigerians must understand that. And so its transparency requirements or obligations to be honest, are quite limited. When it's going on to be listed on the capital market, there are quite a number of transparency requirements which it must satisfy, and which is why I think NNPC is doing a good job at that today. For the first time, they've not posted profit in many years. For the first time, the crude that is used for crude swap agreements was published in the audited financial report, which I'm sure you must have read in the last few days that it had come out. And so I think in terms of transparency, I think in terms of accountability, I think NNPC, the new NNPCL, is now doing a good, and it must do it anyway, because if it's intending to list the capital market, it must get used to this transparency requirement. However, there are certain financial computations or financial engineering that really are dealt with at a curtailment level. And these are financial engineering or calculations that assist the corporation make investment or commercial decisions. I do not, with the greatest respect to all those who have advocated that this should be brought out in the public. I run businesses as well. And the businesses I run, if I have that requirement to publish nationally, I will do so. But there are some, even in your station, what amounts to the final figures that comes to your gross profit in the year. Sometimes it's not the final details that are published. So some of the requests that Nigerians are asking in terms of how is NNPC paying subsidies and et cetera, the payment of subsidies since June 2023 has been from the revenue of NNPC. It's been bearing that burden, even though bearing the burden on behalf of the man who has set subsidies off. And so it's done two things: protected the government from shame, at the same time maintain petroleum in our petroleum stations.
Okay.
And so really, if you take all of that out, they're going to be in crisis.
All right, thank you, Tolulope. Even as we're still hearing stories about the fact that, the NNPCL might not be able to remit funds into the Federation account anymore because, of the various obligations it has with crude swap with different international institutions. We're actually wondering what the financial position. Do you want to quickly react to that in about a second?
Let me just
maybe just about 15 seconds because we need to wrap this.
Maybe even less than 15 seconds. The truth of the matter is, President Tinubu needed to do what he did, because if they don't stop the there's payment of dividends and there's payment of taxes and royalties.
Okay.
Now, payment of taxes and royalties is what you get by renting the assets of government. Payment of dividends is what you're entitled to by owning the business.
Okay.
What President Tinubu has suspended is the payment of dividends, which is his entitlement. Now, he suspended that so that NNPC can operate effectively and be able to pay taxes and royalties, so that FAC is able to distribute monies to the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory.
All right, 50 seconds up. Thank you so much, Tolulope Aderemi, partner Perchstone Graeys LP, for sharing your perspective with us and helping us understand this better.
Always a delight to be on your show. Thank you very much.
All right.